Then now we're gonna go into a question about the butsuzo, Japanese Buddhist sculptures. So I heard one of the catalysts that you had before going into Zen Buddhism. So you went to Japan and saw some statues, and that's one of the catalysts I heard. So can you explain to us a little bit about it, please?
Just, yeah, in terms of my own personal coming to practice. As a teenager, I'd heard about Zen, and there were not many books in English then, very few. I maybe read some stories about Zen and had some idea, but it wasn't that. I just had the opportunity to go visit Japan when I was 20, and I didn't have any particular agenda, but I ended up going down to Kyoto and spending 3 months. I ended up spending 3 months going around to temples in Kyoto and Nara, mostly because of the Buddhist statues and also the Zen gardens. But I was just totally moved and impressed by the Buddhist statues, the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, and also the wrathful figures, the demons, just all the whole world of the butsuzo in Kyoto and Nara was just mind-blowing for me, wonderful. I appreciated Unkei, great Kamakura period sculptor, who slightly earlier contemporary of Dogen in the 1200s, and also he had a number of sons who were also great Buddhist sculptors. I think Japanese people mostly heard of Unkei. You've heard of Unkei?
Of course. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you say, of course, all Japanese people know Unkei, yes. Unkei. Almost no Americans have heard of Unkei, even people who've been practicing Buddhism for a long time. Unkei is like the Japanese Michelangelo. He's a brilliant sculptor, and his whole school he was part of a guild of Buddhist sculptors attached to the temples. And there had been civil wars in the period just before 1200, so a lot of the temples had been burned down and statues destroyed. So there was a great period of rebuilding temples and of rebuilding Buddhist statues of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So Unkei is just amazing and wonderful, and I feel very sad that American Buddhists don't know about him. And actually, many people have seen these statues, but I was just totally impressed by not just the Buddhist statues, also the temple architecture and the gardens, and that whole world that I saw in Kyoto and Nara just blew me away when I was 20. I didn't know that I could have anything to do with it, though. So I came, after several months, went back to school in America, and 4 years later in New York City, I met my first Buddhist teacher, my Soto Zen priest in the Upper West Side in New York, and got instruction in Zazen and heard about Dogen, and have been practicing ever since. So, but in some ways, that experience of seeing those amazing, beautiful statues of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and a whole range of different Buddhist figures from the Buddhist cosmology in Kyoto and Nara was one, not the only, but was one catalyst for me. So, and then later on, because I was so impressed with the Bodhisattva context of Japan and Kyoto and Nara, I wrote a book about the Bodhisattvas, Faces of Compassion and Classic Bodhisattvas in their modern expression, talking about how the major Bodhisattva figures, the 7 major Bodhisattva figures in East Asia are alive in the world today, and explaining about who they are. So that was one of the books I've done. But yeah, that really impressed me. And partly, some American Zen people think of Zen as sort of this separate thing, but it's really goes back to the Mahayana Bodhisattva tradition. We do Bodhisattva practice based on the precepts from the Bodhisattva tradition. Bodhisattva means enlightening being, awakening being, so dedicated to universal awakening. So when we do Zazen, it's not just about us. It's not just a self-help practice. It does help us individually to unfold the possibilities of our life, but we really do it for the sake of all beings. Japanese Soto temples have many Buddhist statues. American Soto Zen temples have statues of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. They're part, and our chants, like our liturgy, like our meal chant, it mentions names of Bodhisattvas. So it's part of our tradition. It's the background of our tradition. All of East Asian Buddhism, all the different East Asian Buddhist traditions, from the Mahayana Sutras, the Great Vehicle Sutras, they're called, are based in this tradition of the Bodhisattvas. And so the images of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and in Zen particularly also, I mentioned this in the beginning, the ancestors, the historical figures in the lineage, in the traditions who kept the tradition alive. There's also statues of them sometimes. So yeah, so we respect them, we study about them sometimes. I would say most Soto Zen people like Buddhist statues.